I came home from the post office expecting quiet only to find a pink HOA notice nailed to my cousin's fence. She'd been fined $75 for painting it lavender, while 3 houses down their green garage got a free pass. So I called her lawyer by sunset. The words, "accounts frozen," flashed across the HOA's own bulletin board, and every smug smile on that street went silent. And that decision, well, it cost them far more than $75. I reached Myrtle Beach just after sunrise, the kind of golden hour that makes every mistake look forgiving. The ocean was a silver sheet behind the houses, and the air carried that mix of salt and lawn fertilizer that only coastal suburbs know. Retirement was supposed to be quiet. Numbers fishing the slow repair of small things. I turned onto Pinecone Drive expecting to see Beth's lavender fence catching the light same as last year. Instead, something pink clung to it, flapping stubborn bright as a wound against pastel wood. I pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. The wind pressed the paper flat for half a breath. That was enough. Violation notice number 224. Color enforcement revenue. Fine, 70. Beth's voice came from the porch, tight and tired. "Don't touch it. They said if I remove it, it's another fine for tampering." She was still in paint-streaked jeans, her hair twisted up like she'd been working since dawn. "Who's they?" I asked, though I already knew. "Clarissa Dane. She's the new finance chair. Calls herself compliance officer now." I walked to the fence. The lavender had faded a little under the summer heat, but still looked soft and clean. Across the street, one fence leaned toward green, another bleached to a pale ghost of white. No violations pinned there. Only Beth's had a public pink shaming pinned like a badge. "What's wrong with lavender?" I said. Beth came closer, hugging her elbows. "It's not on the approved palette." Section 5. Paragraph something. I told her it was the same color as my hydrangeas, but she said that wasn't relevant to community standards. I pulled the notice free enough to scan the text. Section 5.4. Exterior Harmony Standards. A few lines of nonsense about aesthetic cohesion and community value. The fine was payable to something called the Color Improvement Fund. "That sounds made up," I muttered. She printed it from the HOA website last night. Said if I didn't pay in 7 days, they'd add a lien. The paper fluttered in my hand, smelling faintly of toner. I folded it along the crease. "You always said numbers tell the truth." Beth smiled weakly. "And lies too, right?" "And lies too," I said. A shadow moved down the sidewalk. Clarissa herself, clipboard tucked under her arm, sunglasses even though the sun was still low. She smiled like someone used to being right by policy, not reason. "Mr. Marlowe," she said. "Lovely morning. I assume you're here as moral support. I'd remind you, interfering in an active violation process is discouraged." I gestured at the other houses. "What about those fences? Green, white, tan, none of them match the palette either." "The board enforces at its discretion," she said smoothly. "We start with egregious cases." "Egregious," I said. "It's a pastel." She tilted her head. "Community uniformity protects property values." I smiled back, small and deliberate. "So does integrity." Her smile froze. A pause. The wind filled the silence with the faint rattle of the fence slats. Then she turned and walked off heels, clicking sharp on the pavement like punctuation marks. Beth watched her go. "You shouldn't have said that." "I've said worse to auditors," I said. And she just became one. We sat on the porch steps where the boards still smelled of cedar stain. The morning sun warmed the railing. A mockingbird landed on the mailbox, eyeing us like it knew gossip. Beth poured coffee from her dented thermos into 2 chipped mugs, one with seashells, one that read "World's Okayest Cousin." "I didn't think they'd actually fine me," she said. "People do what they want until someone new decides to prove a point." "That's how bad accounting starts," I said. "One unchecked line item, one unreviewed rule." The pink paper rustled again, catching the breeze like it wanted to fly. I stood, straightened it carefully, and pressed the staple back into the wood. "We'll keep it for evidence." Beth frowned. "You think we can fight them?" I looked at the notice at the word revenue, typed bold under the fine. Whoever made the form didn't even hide it. It wasn't about harmony. It was about money. Not fight, I said. Audit. Her eyebrows rose. You mean we'll follow the numbers. Always ends there. The sea wind shifted, carrying the faint clang of a buoy bell from the harbor. For a moment, the sunlight touched the lavender paint, making it gleam like wet lilac. The pink paper fluttered once more and stilled the word fine, catching the light. Quiet returned, but it didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like the beginning of a case file. The next morning, Myrtle Beach was already humming with lawnmowers and gulls. I walked to the community center for coffee and found a new sheet pinned to the HOA bulletin board, thick paper color printed, bold headline, "Color compliance is community pride." The line underneath was smaller but sharper. Residents are reminded that non-standard paint colors diminish property values. And at the bottom in neat italics, Clarissa Dane Finance Chair. I stood there holding my styrofoam cup coffee, turning lukewarm as I read it twice. Someone had even added a photo, Beth's lavender fence cropped tight like a mugshot. Beth arrived a minute later out of breath from her morning walk. "Tell me I'm seeing things," she said. "You're not?" I answered. They went public. Behind us, the smell of burnt coffee thickened as the old percolator struggled. A clock above the bulletin ticked too loud for comfort. "This isn't about color anymore," Beth said. "It's about embarrassment." Clarissa appeared right on cue, carrying her clipboard like a scepter. "Beth, you should see this as a chance to learn," she said with a brittle smile. "Transparency is important to the community." I turned toward her. "Transparency usually includes both sides, doesn't it?" Her expression didn't waver. "The board has spoken. Enforcement ensures consistency." "Consistency," I repeated. "Then perhaps you'd like to explain why Section 8.4 is missing from the version posted on your website." Her pen paused in mid-air. "Excuse me, I downloaded the bylaws this morning. Section 8 jumps from 8.3 to 8.5. The part about color revisions gone. That means your notice doesn't cite the current text." For the first time, she blinked too fast. "That's an administrative error," she said. "Funny," I said. "It's an error that collects $75 a pop." A couple of residents nearby turned their heads. The murmur spread like water through gravel. Beth shifted closer to me, her voice barely above a whisper. "Rick, maybe don't push too hard. Pushing isn't the same as exposing," I said quietly, "and exposure is the only disinfectant this place has left." Clarissa cleared her throat. "If you have concerns, bring them up at the monthly meeting. Tonight, 6 p.m. "Gladly," I said. The meeting room that evening smelled of floor polish and overworked coffee urns. Rows of folding chairs faced a plywood podium. The HOA board sat in a straight line, 4 volunteers and Clarissa in the center posture, perfect. A banner behind them read, "Harmony Through Standards." Beth and I sat near the back. I'd brought a folder neatly labeled Bylaw Evidence. The pink notice was inside, still stapled to a piece of fence wood I'd pried loose that morning. Clarissa started promptly. "First order of business," she said into the microphone, "is the continued enforcement of exterior color guidelines." A few polite claps. Someone coughed. She continued. "It has come to our attention that certain residents believe the board is acting without documentation. Let me assure you, every action is backed by the bylaws." I raised my hand. "Then you won't mind reading Section 8.4 aloud for the record." Her smile faltered. "That's unnecessary grandstanding, Mr. Marlowe." "Then humor me," I said. "Read it." Silence stretched. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice. Someone poured coffee. The urn hissed like a tired kettle. Beth leaned toward me. "You're making her sweat." "I hope so," I said softly. Finally, Clarissa shuffled through her binder and frowned. "It appears this version I held up my printout. This one. The public file dated June 2nd. The crowd leaned in. I flipped the page, highlighting the gap between 8.3 and 8.5. See that missing clause? The rule about color revisions was removed last year when the bylaws were digitized, meaning this entire fine rests on a phantom paragraph. The murmuring grew. Someone near the front whispered, So she fined her anyway? Clarissa's cheeks colored almost the same shade as the notice. The intent remains, she said. The law doesn't enforce intent, I said. It enforces writing, and writing keeps receipts. A low ripple of agreement moved through the room. The same clock ticked again louder now that nobody was talking. Clarissa pressed her lips together. This is an internal matter. Then you shouldn't have posted it on a public board, Beth said suddenly, her voice steady. That flyer humiliated me in front of my neighbors. You used my fence like a warning sign. The room went quiet. Clarissa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Beth turned to the crowd. I just wanted to paint something that reminded me of my mom's garden. If that's a crime, fine me. But at least show me the rule you broke me with. A few people nodded. Someone clapped once awkward but sincere. I set my printout on the front table. Here's the rule you're missing. Clause 8.4 deleted. No mention of approved colors since 2019. The board has been fining based on an obsolete clause. Clarissa looked at me like she was counting seconds until this moment ended. We'll review the documentation, she said stiffly. Do that, I said. Numbers don't hide for long. After the meeting, the hallway smelled of burnt coffee and paper. The bulletin board outside was already stripped bare. Clarissa or one of her loyalists had removed the flyer. Only the pushpins remained little red dots like wounds closing. Beth exhaled. You think she'll refund it? I smiled, small and certain. No, but she'll explain it. She stared at the empty board. Should we just pay and move on? I folded the printout and slid it into my folder. No, I said. We verify. Howard's Grill hadn't changed in 30 years. The same red vinyl booths, the same laminated menus warped at the edges, the same smell, bacon, grease, floor polish, and dusted memories. The kind of diner where retired men nursed refills until noon talking about weather wars and wives who painted too much lavender. Beth sat across from me, the pink violation notice folded neatly between the ketchup bottle and the sugar shaker. She hadn't said much since last night's meeting. Neither had I. The waitress, Eileen, poured coffee into chipped mugs without asking. Morning, hun. You look like you're planning a coup. Maybe a small one, I said. A low chuckle came from the next booth. Howard Lynn turned his newspaper down, glasses slipping down his nose. If that's a coup against Clarissa Dane, I'll pay for breakfast. Beth turned surprised. Howard. You're still around. He grinned. Retired doesn't mean gone. It means I finally have time to be useful. Howard used to practice municipal law before the arthritis took his handwriting. He'd lived 3 doors down from Beth for 20 years, quietly mowing his lawn and quoting case law when provoked. If the HOA had a ghost, they should have feared it was him. He slid into our booth without invitation. So, he said, tell me about this fence. Beth opened the folded notice like evidence in court. Howard read it, mouth twitching in disbelief. Color Improvement Fund, he muttered. That's not a real account type. It's been collecting revenue for months, I said. We found at least 6 posted fines, all for cosmetic issues. Howard tapped the paper. Then they've converted policy into profit. That's misuse of assessment funds. Even under South Carolina HOA statutes, you can't do that without a member vote. Beth frowned. But it's just $75. It's never about the amount Howard said. It's about precedent. One unchecked line becomes a budget. The jukebox behind us clicked, cycling through old tracks. A saxophone filled the air, something from the 70s, all brass and melancholy. Outside, the first drops of rain ticked softly against the window. In the reflection, the pink notice glowed faintly, caught between the neon open sign and my coffee cup. That paper's become a symbol, Howard said, nodding toward it. Keep it safe. It'll matter. I was planning to, I said. I already backed up the bylaws, downloaded meeting minutes, and pulled their financial filings. He smiled. Spoken like a true accountant. Former auditor, I corrected. Old habits die with receipts. Beth sighed. I don't know if I have the stomach for this, Rick. They'll make my life miserable. Howard leaned in. His voice softened but carried steel. You don't need to fight loud. You just need to fight legal. The rain picked up, drumming steady. The waitress topped off our cups again, unbothered by the tension swirling over booth 4. Howard flipped open his notebook, handwriting still sharp despite the tremor. You need to request disclosure of all HOA financial accounts under South Carolina, Code 2730-145. They're required to respond within 30 days. He tore a page free and slid it across the table. Send it certified mail. Keep the receipt. Don't email, don't call paper trail only. Beth stared at the page. That's a lot of paperwork. Howard smiled. Justice usually is. The next morning's gray light bled through the diner's blinds. We'd stayed longer than planned, watching the storm roll over the water tower. Howard's legal pad was covered in notes arrows and statute numbers. My thermos sat empty beside him, an old soldier, retired but still ready. You sure you want to get involved in this? I asked. You've earned peace. He chuckled, shaking his head. Peace is overrated. I miss arguments that matter. Beth grinned faintly. Clarissa's going to hate us. She already does, I said. Howard folded the pink notice, smoothing its creases. Let her. Paper beats ego. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a form printed on heavy stock, a request for financial disclosure typed and dated. He slid it toward me like a sacred text. I drafted this last year for another neighborhood, he said. Never thought I'd need it here. Fill in your names, include the fine reference number, and attach the notice. I scanned it. Pursuant to Section 2730-145C, homeowners are entitled to inspect all financial records of the association upon written request. Beth read over my shoulder. They have to answer. They have to respond. Howard corrected. But once it's certified, ignoring it becomes a violation of their own bylaws. Outside, thunder rumbled somewhere beyond the dunes. The diner's neon sign flickered momentarily, throwing pink light over the table. The notice glowed again, that defiant little rectangle of bureaucracy. Howard drained his cup. You know, when I was practicing, I used to tell my clients something. What's that? I asked. He leaned back, a half smile under his tired eyes. Justice is paperwork that bites back. Beth laughed, small but genuine. Then let's make it bite. Howard tapped the edge of his coffee mug like a gavel. Let's make them read their own fine print. We left the diner after noon. The rain had eased, leaving the pavement dark and clean. Beth carried the notice in a plastic sleeve like a fragile relic. I tucked the certified mail form into my folder, careful not to crease the edges. As we stepped into the parking lot, Howard called after us from under the awning. Remember, it's not personal. It's procedural. I turned back and nodded. Procedural's my favorite kind. Beth smiled through the drizzle. So, what now? I opened my car door folder, tucked under one arm. Tomorrow, I said, we file. The email arrived at 7:42 a.m., just as I sat down with my first cup of coffee. Subject: transfer confirmation, HOA, operating account. For a second, I thought it was spam until I saw the sender treasurer at myrtlecreekho.org. My stomach tightened. Clarissa's name was in the signature line right under the tagline, Harmony Through Standards. The body of the email was short, impersonal, and efficient. Confirmation $9,000 transfer completed to Vendor Color Consultancy. Invoice number 5537. It ended with one line. Please retain for records. Records. The word tasted familiar and dangerous. I leaned back in my chair, letting the morning sunlight draw thin gold lines across my desk. My home office was a museum of my past life file cabinets labeled in block letters, a framed certificate from the State Auditor's Board, and an old scanner that still made the same faint hum when warming up. The pink notice sat pinned to the corkboard above my desk, edges curling. Beside it was the certified mail receipt we'd sent last week. Howard had warned me, "They'll underestimate you, Rick. That's your leverage." I opened the email again, downloading the attachment. Transfer log March 2024.xsls. It wasn't even password protected. Clarissa's arrogance had its uses. The spreadsheet opened like a confession. Line after line of small transactions, landscaping, pest control, holiday lighting. Then there it was. 03/15/2024, $9,000, Color Consultancy. Memo Community Aesthetic Evaluation. I frowned. That name hadn't appeared on any vendor list. I searched the file for duplicates. None. Just one payment, large and lonely, nestled between ordinary maintenance charges. Howard's words echoed in my head. Policy into profit. I typed the name into the state's business registry. Color Consultancy returned one result registered to Derek C. Dane, Clarissa's nephew. I sat back slowly, the chair creaking. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up sprinklers hissing gulls circling the soft rumble of a mail truck. The world sounded too normal for what I'd just found. I hit print. The old laser printer coughed, then spit out the page. Ink, faint but legible. I spread the sheet under the strip of sunlight cutting across the desk. My reflection wavered on the glossy paper, pale and tired but steady. The smell of coffee grounded me. The hum of the scanner joined it soft and steady like a metronome marking a new tempo. I scanned the page, saved the file, and named it deliberately Evidence Ledger POF. Beth called around 9. Any word from the board? Nothing official, I said. But I've got something better. You found proof. Proof motive and a family name. Her breath caught on the other end. Dane, her nephew. $9,000 for consulting. The same week she fined you for $75. That's... She stopped. That's fraud, isn't it? It's a start, I said. Fraud's what we call it after signatures. Howard arrived 20 minutes later, raincoat still damp from the mist outside. He carried a box of donuts and the calm of a man who'd spent years navigating worse storms. Got your message, he said. You sound like a man who just found his smoking spreadsheet. I slid the printed page across the table. $9,000 to a company registered to her nephew. No contract, no vote, no oversight. He read it twice, then nodded. This is enough to request a forensic audit. The county clerk will have to open the books. Will she know it came from me? Beth asked. Howard smiled. That depends on how quietly we file. The three of us sat around my desk. The scanner hummed again as I digitized every document, the email, the ledger, the vendor record. The pink notice hung behind us like a witness fluttering gently in the air conditioning. Beth whispered, It feels strange. All this over a fence color. It's never about color, I said. It's about control. Paint's just the symptom. Howard sipped his coffee, considering. You ready to make this official? I was born ready, I said. Just didn't know it had come with paperwork instead of fireworks. He chuckled. Fireworks fade. Paper lasts. I composed a short email to the County Compliance Division. Attached evidence a ledger. PDF, the pink notice, and the registered business record. Subject line, Request for Investigation. HOA, Financial Irregularities. Beth watched as I typed. You think they'll actually respond? They have to. I said, hitting send. That's the beauty of bureaucracy. The screen blinked. Message sent successfully. A second later, a reply landed in my inbox, automated but still sweet to read. Received. Investigation initiated. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight settle. Outside, the gulls had gone quiet. The morning light shifted across the desk, catching on the printed ledger like a spotlight. $9,000, one fence, and the first crack in Clarissa's wall. Every seat in the Myrtle Creek clubhouse was taken. Folding chairs pressed close together, the air thick with anticipation and cheap coffee. You could hear it in the whispers the story had escaped the cul-de-sac. $75 over a fence, someone murmured behind me. And now the county's involved. Beth sat 2 rows up, shoulders straight, lavender scarf the only color in a room full of beige. The pink notice lay folded in her lap, a relic turned emblem. Howard sat beside me, notebook open, pen steady as always. At the front, Clarissa adjusted her blazer, all composure and pearls, but her eyes darted to the back of the room where the county compliance officer stood young, polite, with a badge clipped to her folder. The projector clicked on, throwing the HOA logo across the wall. Myrtle Creek Homeowners Association Monthly Financial Hearing. I leaned toward Howard. She's expecting to run the room. He smiled faintly. Then we let her start running. Clarissa cleared her throat into the microphone. This meeting will address recent misunderstandings regarding operating accounts and community funds. I assure everyone. The projector hummed louder. Someone switched to the next slide, a spreadsheet. HOA operating account. Color enforcement revenue. Clarissa froze mid-sentence. Her own ledger filled the wall. Rows of small fines, $50, $75, $100 totaling almost $10,000. The last line was highlighted yellow, 03-15, 2024, $9,000, vendor color consultancy. Beth whispered, "That's it." Howard didn't move. "Wait for the pen." Clarissa blinked rapidly, trying to regain her rhythm. "These are authorized expenditures, routine consulting. Consulting with your nephew's company," I said, my voice calm but carrying. A few heads turned. Clarissa's smile cracked. "That's irrelevant to the community's aesthetic interests." Howard's pen scratched the words conflict of interest on his notepad. The compliance officer stepped forward. "Ms. Dane, could you clarify the vendor's relationship to the board?" Clarissa's hand trembled slightly. "My nephew provides color assessments, purely advisory." The officer nodded. "And this $9,000 transfer, who approved it?" Clarissa hesitated. The projector fan filled the silence with its steady mechanical sigh. "I did," she said finally. "As acting treasurer." Howard whispered beside me. Acting without a quorum, she just hung herself. I glanced at the projector. "Can you zoom in on the signature line?" I asked. The officer obliged. Clarissa's name appeared in bright, blown-up font, bold, black, undeniable. For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. The projector's light flickered against her face. Her pen, clasped in her hand, shook slightly against her binder. That was the silent beat, the hum of machinery louder than any word. Beth stood, voice steady but trembling at the edges. "So, while you fined me for painting a fence, you paid your family $9,000 for picking colors." Clarissa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Someone in the back let out a low whistle. Another muttered, "Guess the color of money counts as neutral." The crowd's mood shifted. Whispers turned to small bursts of applause. Clarissa slammed the binder shut. "This is a witch hunt," she said. "You people don't understand the responsibilities of governance." Howard rose slowly, smoothing his tie. "Governance begins with consent, Ms. Dane. You don't get to rewrite accountability as art direction." The compliance officer stepped up to the microphone. "For the record, the county acknowledges irregularities in fund allocation. An audit will be initiated effective immediately." Beth exhaled shakily, tears glinting under the fluorescent lights. "You mean this is over?" "Not yet," Howard said softly, "but it's begun." The officer advanced to the final slide, a document scan titled Color Enforcement Revenue Log. The cursor blinked near Clarissa's digital signature. Then, as if on cue, the screen froze. The room fell into silence. Her name glowed at the bottom of the frozen image, backlit by the faint hum of the projector. Howard leaned toward me. "That's our cliff," he whispered. Clarissa tried to move past it, but even her words faltered. "Technical issue," she murmured. I looked at the screen and said quietly, "Nothing glows brighter than guilt under a projector." A few chuckles scattered through the room. Even the officer cracked a small smile. Howard capped his pen. "Well," he said under his breath, "guess we found the real non-standard color." As the meeting adjourned, folding chairs scraped the floor like applause. Plastic coffee cups clinked into bins. Outside, the evening light turned soft gold, the kind that made everything look forgiven, though nothing yet was. Beth turned to me. "Think she'll resign?" "She'll stall," I said. "But the numbers won't." The projector's afterimage lingered in my eyes as we stepped into the parking lot, Clarissa's signature burning like a watermark. The courier showed up just after dawn, his brown uniform still damp from the ocean mist. He held a single envelope, heavy paper sealed in red wax. "Delivery for Clarissa Dane," he said, reading the name twice like it might bite him. I signed for it, the morning air cool against my hands. The envelope glowed faintly crimson under the porch light, the kind of red that meant consequence. Across the street, Clarissa's blinds twitched. She'd been watching since the audit hearing. Her world ran on control, and now it was running out of ink. I slipped the envelope into my briefcase and walked toward her house. The community garden in front of the clubhouse shimmered with dew. Tomato plants staked upright, a flag still tangled from last night's breeze. The neighborhood looked the same, but the current had changed. When I reached her gate, she was already standing outside, robe crisp expression carved from disbelief. "What is that?" she asked. Eyes flicking to the wax seal. "Temporary financial injunction," I said, keeping my tone even. "Signed by Judge Harper at 4:27 p.m. yesterday." She blinked, not understanding at first. Then her hand twitched. "You're serving me. Technically the court is. I'm just the messenger." I held out the envelope. She didn't take it. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of sea salt and fertilizer. The chime by her porch swayed once, twice, then rang soft and hollow. That was the silent beat. A single metallic note hanging between us. Clarissa finally reached out and touched the wax seal the way someone might touch a wound they didn't know they had. "This isn't necessary," she said, her voice trembling. "You've made your point. It's not about points," I said. "It's about balance." She hesitated, then tore the seal. Inside were 3 pages stamped and initialed "Court Order Temporary Injunction." I watched her eyes move across the lines. When she reached the paragraph listing HOA reserve accounts frozen pending investigation, her face went pale. Her phone slipped from her fingers, hit the concrete, and clattered once before going still. The garden wind caught the papers as she loosened her grip, rustling the corner of justice like a dry leaf. Howard appeared behind me, cane tapping against the walkway. "Morning, Clarissa," he said, almost kindly. "The court moves faster than you'd think when there's a spreadsheet involved." Clarissa's voice broke. "You can't do this." The board's accounts are public," Howard interrupted. "Public means accountable. You had your say. Now the numbers get theirs." Beth stepped up beside me, quiet but resolute. "They froze your reserve accounts," she said softly. "Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to lose something built on trust." Clarissa turned on her tears, threatening. "All this over a fence?" "No," I said. "All this because you thought no one would check." The sun edged higher, lighting the wax fragments in Clarissa's hand. The chime rang again, smaller this time. The red seal lay broken on the ground like a verdict you couldn't reassemble. Howard bent to pick up the fallen phone, wiped off the dust, and placed it on her porch rail. "You might want to call your accountant," he said. "Or your nephew." Clarissa didn't answer. She just stood there staring at the order as if reading the end of her own chapter. Beth looked at me. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "they reconcile." Howard smiled, tired but satisfied. "Now they pay back what they took." Later at my home office, I opened a new file folder and labeled it HOA, Evidence Sealed. Inside, I placed the scanned copy of the court order and the ledger printouts. The prop, once a pink notice, then a cracked ledger, was now sealed evidence. I sat back watching the scanner's light bar crawl across the page. The hum felt familiar, almost comforting. Outside, the breeze rattled the wind chimes again. Justice didn't arrive with noise or fanfare. It came folded, signed, and stamped, sealed, in quiet authority. By noon, the HOA website went down. The bulletin board was cleared. The community email list fell silent. Myrtle Creek had lost its usual stream of directives, but for the first time in months, the neighborhood felt awake. Beth called around lunchtime. I saw her car leave. She didn't wave. "She will," I said. "Eventually. You think she'll apologize?" "People like Clarissa don't apologize," I said. "They adjust." Howard's text came through a moment later, Judge confirmed receipt. Audit scheduled next week. I smiled. Justice doesn't shout, I murmured. It arrives sealed. The same hall that once echoed with Clarissa's orders now smelled of lemon cleaner and calm. The folding chairs were straightened, the projector gone, the wall behind the podium newly painted in a modest beige. A hand-lettered sign taped to the door read, HOA Special Session, Refund Distribution and Charter Review. Inside, neighbors gathered in a quiet line. The same faces that once avoided each other now exchanged half-smiles. Some carried casserole dishes, others thermoses, as if this were more potluck than reckoning. Beth stood near the front, lavender scarf tied loosely around her neck. She glanced back at me and grinned. "Can you believe this?" I smiled. "I believe paperwork, not miracles." Howard chuckled from the podium. "Then you're about to see a rare overlap." He tapped the microphone gently. "Folks, we've all been through enough fine print for a lifetime, so let's keep this short and honest." The murmur faded. In accordance with the audit, he continued, the HOA has approved full refunds for all color enforcement fines issued under the invalid clause. Total reimbursement, $4,720. A small cheer broke out. Not loud, but warm, like the sound of relief finally given permission. Howard held up a stack of envelopes. Checks are arranged alphabetically. Please sign the ledger when you collect yours. That word ledger carried a new weight. I watched people step up one by one, signing names that had once been whispered in complaint. Beth's turn came. She took her envelope, opened it just enough to see the check, then folded it neatly. She turned toward me, eyes glistening. "It's not about the money, you know I said, but it's good ink." The community hall felt lighter than it had in months. Someone had brought coffee and lemon bars. Kids ran between the chairs laughing. The tension that used to hang over these meetings was gone, dissolved like dust after rain. Howard motioned for me to join him at the front. "You should read the new charter," he said quietly. "It's yours as much as anyone's." He handed me a printed draft stapled at the corner. I flipped through it, plain text, nothing flowery. But each clause had meaning. Article 3. Governance. All financial actions require full board consent and public posting. Article 4. Aesthetics. No exterior citation shall be issued without community vote and archival record. Howard smiled. We stripped out the vanity, left the bones that matter. Beth walked up behind us, reading over my shoulder. "I like it," she said. "Feels human. Justice usually does." Howard replied. When everyone had received their refunds, Howard called the room to attention again. Before we adjourn, he said, "There's one more thing." He opened a small wooden box and lifted out an old set of brass keys, tarnished heavy, the kind that belonged to the filing cabinets behind the old HOA desk. These belonged to the former treasurer. He said, glancing at me, "Now, by vote of the interim board, we're turning them over to someone who believes transparency isn't revenge, it's repair." He held them out. I hesitated. "Howard—" "I'm not qualified," he interrupted with a grin. "You were the only one who bothered to read the ledger. That's qualification enough." The room chuckled softly. The sound of folding chairs shifting filled the air, followed by a round of gentle applause. I stepped forward, took the keys, their weight surprising me. Brass and history mixed in my hand. For a long second, no one spoke. Then the applause faded into silence, a silent beat where even the paper rustling stopped. I looked at the new charter on the podium, the refund list beside it, and the crowd waiting not for punishment, but closure. "These keys don't belong to me," I said finally. "They belong to whoever keeps the light on and the books open." A voice from the back called out, "You're that guy now." Laughter followed, but it felt warm, earned. I cleared my throat. "We'll post the new charter tonight. We'll publish all minutes and ledgers going forward. And if anyone wants to paint their fence pink lavender or plaid, just ask your neighbors, not your treasurer." Howard laughed. "That's going in the minutes." The crowd began to disperse, talking softly, carrying leftovers to the potluck table. The smell of coffee mixed with lemon cleaner. Beth stood near the doorway watching the sunset spill through the hall windows. She turned toward me, smile tired but peaceful. Feels different, doesn't it? It does, I said, like a system remembering it has a soul. Howard clapped a hand on my shoulder. You end it, he said quietly. That's what you're good at. I looked down at the keys again, gleaming faintly under the fluorescent light. We don't hide ledgers anymore, I said. Beth nodded. And that's worth more than $75. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting soft halos across the quiet cul-de-sac. The hall behind us glowed steady, warm, ordinary, and honest. For the first time, the word community didn't sound like a formality. The autumn sun reached across Myrtle Creek like forgiveness. Its first light caught the lavender fence, newly painted, officially approved this time, and turned it soft gold at the edges. Beth stood beside it, a coffee mug in hand, the air cool enough for breath to show. I walked up the gravel path, newspaper tucked under my arm. The headline read, HOA, Audit, Completed, Refunds, Paid, Charter, Renewed. Beneath it, a smaller line. Community recognizes volunteers who kept the books honest. Beth smiled as I approached. You made the paper again, she said. I didn't make it, I said. Paperwork did. She laughed, that easy sound that had been missing for months. The fence shimmered behind her, proud and quiet. The pink notice, the same one that started it all, was now framed in her window like a piece of folklore. The new board gathered near the gate at 10 o'clock sharp. Someone had set up a folding table with pastries and a silver coffee pot that steamed gently in the crisp air. Howard stood at the front, cane in one hand, manila folder in the other. He nodded when he saw me. Good crowd, he said. You'd think we were unveiling a monument. In a way, I said we are. Children chased each other near the community garden. The lemon cleaner smell from the hall still lingered faintly. Someone had taken pride in polishing things for the ceremony. The breeze carried the sound of the flag rope clinking against its pole. The same gate where the pink notice once fluttered now held a new object, a small square covered in cloth bolted just below the HOA emblem. Howard tapped the microphone they'd borrowed from the church. Friends and neighbors, he began, voice steady but warm. Today isn't about fines or fences. It's about fairness, about remembering that numbers only mean something when they're honest. A few people clapped softly. Beth stood close, hands clasped, scarf fluttering in the wind. Howard continued. This plaque is dedicated to those who reminded us that transparency isn't paperwork. It's people. He looked at me, then eyes glinting with something like mischief. Rick, would you do the honors? I hesitated. You sure? He grinned. I'm retired. You're the accountant who made math emotional. I stepped forward. The brass plaque gleamed beneath the cloth, catching slivers of sunlight. My hand brushed the corner, cool, polished, heavier than it looked. Here's to open books, I said quietly, and pulled the cloth away. The crowd clapped, gentle but long. The brass surface reflected the sky, and in its center were the words, in honor of citizens who kept the books honest. Myrtle, Creek Homeowners Association, 2024. Below the inscription, 3 small names were engraved. Beth Avery Howard, Lynn Richard Marlowe. The wind stirred through the leaves overhead, whispering against the polished metal. That was the silent beat, sunlight flashing off brass, a shimmer that felt like closure. Howard leaned on his cane. Looks good, doesn't it? It does, I said, like truth with a shine. After the crowd began to disperse, Beth and I lingered by the fence. She reached into her pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. Edges, faded, corners soft. The pink notice. You should keep this, she said. You earned it. I unfolded it carefully. The ink was smudged, but the words were still legible. Fine, 70 ta. Violation, unapproved color. I smiled and slid it into my jacket pocket. Proof of concept, I said. Fairness doesn't need noise. It needs memory. Beth looked at the plaque again. You think she'll ever come back? Clarissa, I asked. Yeah, to see it. I took a slow sip of coffee. Maybe. And if she does... I turned toward the gate, brass letters gleaming behind me. If she returns, the books are open. The ceremony ended with laughter and leftover muffins. The new board stayed behind gathering signatures on the revised charter. I walked home through the path that curved past the mailboxes, the same place where justice once arrived, sealed in red. The air smelled of wet leaves and roasted coffee. Somewhere down the block, a radio played an old soul tune, crackly but comforting. When I reached my porch, I set the pink notice beside the morning newspaper. Two relics of accountability, both ink and paper. I poured a second cup of coffee, sat down on the steps, and watched the sunlight spread across the lavender fence. It wasn't rebellion anymore. It was history. The morning sun brushed the brass plaque, and for a moment the whole fence shimmered like it forgave everything that came before. The smell of coffee drifted from the potluck table while neighbors lingered talking softly. We'd replaced rules with understanding, numbers with trust. Systems can wound, but they can also heal when hands steady the pen that signs again. Justice doesn't echo in courtrooms, it settles in quiet yards. Fairness remembers. Share your HOA story. Below your map might help someone redraw theirs.